Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis, and we have a new guest. It's Mike Kuborn. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, George.
You've been with Curtis Law a little over a month, and you, in addition to doing the kind of work that we've done for many, many years, and that is personal injury, employee rights, workers' compensation, malpractice, and things like that, you said you like to do family law. Well, I have to admit I was shocked because never was so happy to get out of an area of law when 25 years ago I said, that's it. I'm not handling another divorce case. I'm not even going to handle my own. What is there about family law that you find interesting and challenging that you'd like to do it?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is the dynamics of the situation. Usually, by the time it reaches the point where we've taken a family situation and put it into the court system, there's such a bipolar disintegration within the relationship that the dynamics are very interesting in terms of helping both of the participants usually work back towards something that's not only going to maintain some form of communication, but work to their individual assistance. And then, of course, when there's children, there's even more importance to have that regular communication and work through those problems.
Well, it certainly is important. And the lodestar is, of course, to look out for the children. But it's complex. And I read in the paper all the time that people are going to sell you a kit for $75 to get divorced pro se without beginning to understand the complexities of children, adoption, children that were born during the marriage, before the marriage, after the marriage, people who lived together and weren't really married, but the marital property law kicks in. That is a very, very complex area, and by the time people go to a lawyer, they're usually years late for when they should have gone to a lawyer. Isn't that the truth?
Oh, very, very true. Not only is it so complex that that first step, or the first order that a person attains within the family law system, not only is that so important to set the framework for the future, but there are so many instances where changes after that initial order occur that require great assistance in order to assist people out of those changes that occur in their lives.
Well, I've been thinking recently about many of our service people who were with the Guard, for example, and we have a lot of people right here in the Valley that might have been making $30, $40, $50, $60, $160,000 a year, and they had support payments or alimony payments, child payments based on that kind of income. Uncle Sam picks them up and sends them to Iraq, where they're making a fraction of that. What happens to these people? How are they protected?
Well, that's a good example of one of the bigger problems that can occur after you get into the family law system. Anyone that has a financial obligation, and that can include a variety of things, some of which you mentioned, child support, maintenance in a paternity situation, payments for birthing and support of the child. Anyone that has one of those financial obligations can't make a change to that obligation until they give the court the power to do so. Normally that's a motion that's brought to the court that gives them the information about that change in the person's lives. Until they do that, the court has no power to go back any further anyway than the date that they file that motion. I have so many clients who lose a job, or like in your example, get activated, sent to not necessarily Iraq, but just anyone who's activated is bound to make less now than they were able to in their civilian employment situation. That constitutes a significant change in circumstances. And you don't give the court the ability to react to that until you file a motion.
So working it out over the internet or by telephone from Saudi Arabia is just making the bomb tick. You really need to get an attorney as soon as you realize there's going to be a change, and instead of making 160 grand, you're lucky if you're going to be making 20,000, and you've got a child support obligation, and of course you've got an ex-spouse who's relying on that money. It kind of pinches on both sides, doesn't it?
Well, very much so. And without making some kind of a reaction to that situation, your current order, whatever your requirements are for the child support or the maintenance, are going to continue and build arrearages which, by the way, also build interest during this time frame when you don't have the ability to make the kind of money that those figures were originally based on.
And this is why we read about the worst cases, of course, where somebody is brought back for Grandpa's funeral and he's picked up on an outstanding warrant and he owes $199,000 and he's going to jail because these things build up, don't they?
Well, and as unique as that may sound, it's not actually unique. There are quite a number of cases, in fact, even that I've had in the months since I've been here, people who have had a change in jobs, as an example, that now are not able to make as much in what they were able to locate for new employment as they had in their previous position, struggle through that, try to make as much of the payments as they possibly can after several years of struggling and, of course, building those arrearages. An arrest warrant is issued because they're so far behind. They come for a visitation and they're arrested. That happens way too frequently. With the right type of assistance early in that situation, those obligations could have been modified. The arrearages, if any, would have been quite a bit less and wouldn't have two holes to crawl out of.
And of course, if I had an arrearage anywhere near the numbers that we're talking about, I would hesitate to make my visitations, which means that the children are damaged further by the broken marriage, and they always seem to be the victims. Everybody's a victim when a marriage doesn't work, but certainly the children are. And if Dad's afraid to come around or afraid to call because Mother's got a warrant out for him, that just deepens the bitterness and the tragedy, and it injures the children and eventually grandchildren, and everybody really is a loser in that scenario.
Very, very true. And breaking those bonds, particularly with younger children, are things that you may never be able to repair.
Well, this is interesting. I'm glad you're doing it. I'm not doing it. It's very important. Interestingly, when we read about the kinds of law that are growth industry and the kinds that are shrinking industry, and that's going on all the time, the family law area is one of the growth areas. And you happen to have an interest in a kind of practice where people really need service. Maybe they think it's simple and they can work it out and do it by themselves, but almost always there's a penalty on doing it yourself in the family area, isn't there?
Most definitely. So I think the simple answer is when you recognize a situation, and you should most definitely recognize that you have a situation whenever you have a change in financial circumstances, you need the assistance of a lawyer to make sure that you're going to proceed into the future with the best benefits and the best system to maintain those relationships that we talked about.
So call a family lawyer. Here, call Mike Kuborn. Don't call George Curtis. And the first conference is free, isn't it?
That's correct.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, George.
We'll be right back.